in Nashville, Tennessee. He's an entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and the author of a great book that I bought a year ago. Kris is the only one of two people we've ever come back and speak a second time to our Network in Action family. So congratulations on that, Kris. Kris wrote a book called Overcoming the Imposter. Silence your inner critic and lead with confidence. It's a great book. I want to tell a quick story. You know, I don't care who you are. Most all of us at some point in time have a little bit of the imposter syndrome. There are nights I wake up in the middle of the night, 10 years into this business. You know, we're the second largest networking organization in the country in 10 years. It blows me away. And there's days where I wake up and I'm like in a cold sweat going, oh my gosh, this thing's about to come undone. You know, it's like a cheap suit or a bad deck of cards. It's about the whole house of cards is going to fall down. And then I go, wait a minute. You know what? We're adding great people every single week, and we have great franchise owners, and it's just part of owning a business and running a business, I think. So Kris does a great job in that book. He's a trained leadership coach. He's worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs and business owners in their leadership teams across 6 continents. He serves as the Dean of Entrepreneurship at the Professional Christian Coaching Institute, which he's a growth coach at Heroic Public Speaking. Let me tell you about Heroic Public Speaking. That is up in New Jersey, right, Kris? And you can actually go up there for a couple of days and get free training for 2 days about how to become a paid public speaker. So if you're interested in that, reach out to Kris. He's an instructor at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center and is a contributing writer for publications including Fast Company Magazine, Yahoo Finance, and the National Business Journal. He's founded multiple companies, been on several boards. He's an active member of Cornerstone Nashville, where he serves, teaches, and coaches other leaders. And most importantly, he has raised 3 great sons. So I'm super excited to have Kris talk about humble confidence today, avoiding the fake it till you make it syndrome. Kris, it's all yours. Thank y'all for being here.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen here as well. Good to be here. Thanks so much, Scott. I appreciate the invite to come back. And it's fun to see some familiar faces again and a lot of new faces and names. And so we're going to talk about overcoming or really escaping the trap of fake it till you make it. You heard a little bit of my background there. I've been an entrepreneur for going on 18 years now. And I started my first business in 2007. And at the time, I had no business training whatsoever. I don't even have a college degree. And so there was a lot that I didn't know at that time. And I remember going to a large bookstore and I bought a stack of books covering everything I thought I needed to know to run a small business. Things like marketing, finance, sales, contracts. Yes, I read a book on writing contracts. They should make you sign a waiver before you read a book about writing contracts, by the way. But I read all of them. I just read those books and I started a business and I got to work. And those first few years were just such a learning experience for me. I was figuring it out as I go. I was learning a ton. And if you've ever started something new, even if you haven't started a company or a business, but maybe you've gotten a promotion or you've transitioned to a different industry or taken on a new project that's a little bit outside of your experience, you've probably heard this common piece of advice, this little cliche, this trite saying, fake it till you make it. And I can't count how many times I heard that. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I really don't like that advice. In fact, I think it's terrible advice. And it's not just because I'm automatically skeptical of advice that rhymes. Like, okay, a stitch in time saves 9. Really? Does it really save 9? Or does it just save 4, but 9 sounds better? Anyway, I digress. There's a couple of reasons why I don't like the advice, fake it till you make it. And it starts with the fact that there's just an inherent deception in there that doesn't sit well with me as a person. It's dishonest. And I just don't want to, I would never advise somebody to try to get ahead through deception and dishonesty. And the second reason why I don't like that advice is that if you struggle with any doubt, if you have any worries about what you're trying to accomplish, and of course, you heard Scott say that I wrote a book about imposter syndrome. I've studied that extensively. And if you wrestle with any form of imposter syndrome, then calling yourself a fake or telling yourself to fake it is not going to help you there. It's not going to boost your confidence to decide to be a fake. It's going to erode your confidence. It's going to make you feel like you're faking it. And the third reason why I don't like that advice is even more practical, is that when you're faking it, you're acting like you don't need any help. And if you act like you don't need help, then you're going to miss out on opportunities to get help. So you could actually set yourself back, or at the very least, move forward much slower than you should because you decide to fake it. Now, I've experienced this a lot. As I mentioned, I started a business at 31, 17, 18 years ago with no business training or experience. And I've actually shifted industries multiple times in my career, from music production originally to IT. I was a software developer 25 years ago, and then moving into leadership development, where now I train and coach entrepreneurs, business owners, and leadership teams, and I speak to audiences around the world. And so I've shifted a lot, and I really enjoy trying new things. I genuinely like it because I like the learning that goes with it. But when I do that, when I do something new, when I dive in, there's a temptation to fake it. When I'm in over my head, when I'm learning as I go, when I'm trying to figure something out, there's that temptation to fake it. But here's what I noticed when I give in to that temptation to fake it. There's a pride that develops, and even an arrogance that can develop as I'm trying to appear as self-confident, as competent and self-assured as I can. But that pride is really a mask for an inner insecurity. There's a fear going on that somebody is going to figure out that I'm faking it. And so I call that state of being proud insecurity, where there's this big difference between how you're acting on the outside and how you really feel on the inside. And that difference, that gap that you see, it can show up in a lot of different ways. It shows up in a lot of stress and anxiety. It can be exhausting. It shows up as a lot of wasted effort on things like managing your image, being overly focused on how you come across and what people think of you. And it's wasted on overanalyzing situations and replaying conversations in your head again and again, trying to see if you can decipher what somebody meant or what they're thinking. It's wasted on covering your flaws and mistakes, trying to appear like you have it all together and you're getting it all right. And this waste, by the way, it doesn't just affect you as an individual. There's a cumulative effect to this wasted energy and effort. Imagine, if you will, an entire organization of people who are faking it till they make it. It would be a mess. It could descend into chaos. Like, expectations would almost never be met. Progress would be so slow. And then take that a step further and imagine an entire community of people who are all faking it. It would be chaotic. And so as I started to think about this problem, and I recognized that I was susceptible to this trap of fake it till you make it and proud insecurity, I asked myself one day, if proud insecurity is so dangerous and so potentially destructive, then what's the opposite of that? Well, the opposite is humble confidence. Now, at first blush, it might seem like humility and confidence are at odds with one another. Like maybe they don't go together, but they're not opposites. And they actually make really great partners. And one of the keys to understanding this is that we have the right perspective on humility. Okay, one of my favorite quotes on humility comes from author Rick Warren. And the quote is, "Humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less." See, humility doesn't mean that you have this low opinion of yourself. It means that you quit worrying about what everyone thinks of you. You quit managing your image. You quit wasting that effort. And instead, you focus on other people. And instead of wasting a lot of effort and energy trying to appear great, you can focus your energy on just simply becoming great. You can focus on getting better. So when I think about this difference between proud insecurity and humble confidence, I started to notice a couple of other things. As I studied and as I've talked to people about this over the years, I noticed that when I intentionally work towards humility, I also grow in my confidence, that one feeds the other, that a movement away from pride into humility will actually build and boost confidence. And I also noticed that these two, humility and confidence, there's a symbiosis there. There's a mutually reinforcing relationship. They're interdependent because you can't have one without the other for very long. Think about this. Humility without confidence can descend into self-deprecation, even self-sabotage. But confidence without humility turns into hubris and arrogance, and it does move back into that arena of pride. And so humility and confidence partner together really well, and they keep you safe. They protect you from falling into that trap of proud insecurity. Now, in order to help you understand what humble confidence looks like, I want to share three humble confidence behaviors. And if we have time, I'm going to give you a fourth one as well. I actually have 10 that I outline in my book, but we don't have time to cover all 10. I don't want to fire hose you with them all. So we're going to cover 3 or 4 humble confidence behaviors. And the great thing about these behaviors is that they're decisions that you can make. And they're actually habits that you can build that will help you to avoid that trap of proud insecurity and to walk in and cultivate humble confidence in your life. So let's dive into habit number 1. The first one involves a very simple phrase, although simple is not the same as easy. Okay? In fact, even as simple as this phrase is, it can be one of the hardest things in the world to say. And that simple phrase is, I don't know. I see some smiles, right? That I don't know. When you're stuck in proud insecurity, it can be so difficult to admit that you don't know something. When somebody asks you a question and you feel like you should know the answer and you don't, the temptation is to make something up, to try to sound smart. Now, maybe it's just me, but I know that I've caught myself at times. Someone asks me a question and I don't really have an answer, but I just start talking. And it's like I think I can just find my way there. If I talk long enough, I'll come to the right conclusion. And the problem with that is that it paints you into a corner. The moment that you start sounding like an expert, you put a lot of pressure on yourself to come up with the right answer, even if you don't have it. But by starting with, I don't know, you relieve yourself of the pressure to be the expert, to come up with the right answer. And it's actually freeing. You free yourself from that burden to fake it. Now, the key to this is that I don't know doesn't have to be the end of the sentence, right? You don't have to just say, I don't know. You can say things like, I don't know, though I have some theories. Or, I don't know, but I do know someone who has the kind of expertise that we need. I don't know, but I have a black belt in Google search. If you're part of a team, you can say, I don't know, but I bet we can figure it out. And this is even more important if you're a leader. All right, because when you're in leadership, if you fake it, if you pretend to have the answer, people will assume that you do have the answer and they'll defer to you, keeping their own ideas to themselves. So you get more from your team when you start with I don't know. When you say I don't know, you invite other people into the conversation. So habit number 1 is to say I don't know more easily and more often when you don't have the answer. Habit number 2 is to reorient the source of your confidence. Now, a number of years ago, I was making one of those industry shifts that I mentioned earlier, where I was moving from one industry, one kind of business to something completely different. And I confided in my coach. I've had an executive coach. I've had several over the years that I really wasn't sure I could make the switch, that I wasn't feeling confident about this new direction. And my coach at the time, a psychologist named Dr. Roger Hall, he challenged me and he taught me the difference between self-esteem and self-efficacy. Self-esteem, he said, it's largely emotional. It's how you feel about yourself and your value. But feelings are very fickle. They change easily, and so they're unreliable. But self-efficacy, he said, is a honest assessment of your capabilities, your resources, and your track record. And what he did in that moment was he challenged me to look back at all the times in my past I had tried something new and been able to figure it out and eventually be successful. And so since then, I have learned to shift the source of my confidence, not from having the answers, but from my ability to find the answers. See, I'm a good learner. I have a knack for it. I can dive into a situation and I may not get it right and I may make some mistakes, but I can figure it out. And so that means that I can have the humility to admit that I don't have all those answers, that I am going to make some mistakes along the way, that it is a learning process for me, but also have the confidence to believe that I can and will ultimately be successful. I don't have to fake it. I can just admit that I'm in learning mode. And my confidence doesn't have to come from some artificial expertise. It comes from my ability to develop that expertise. So habit number 1 is to say, I don't know, more often, more easily. Habit number 2 is to reorient the source of your confidence. Habit number 3 is to share your mistakes and your failures more readily, but to reframe those as lessons learned. Now, you've probably heard before that we learn a lot from failure, and we should reframe failure as learning. And there's a famous story among IBM employees about Tom Watson when he was running, the founder of the company, when he was running the company many years ago. Tom Watson had called in one of his salespeople into his office to discuss a failed bid that was worth over $1 million to IBM. Now, that was many years ago, so that would be many times that amount today. So I want you to imagine for a moment that you're being called in to the CEO's office to discuss your multi-million-dollar failure. He walked in with his resignation letter in hand because he assumed that's what the meeting was going to be about. And Tom Watson took the letter and he looked at it and he looked at the man and said, "Why would we let you go? We just invested $1 million in your education." See, Tom Watson understood that there's powerful learning and lessons that come through failure. And he wasn't about to see those lessons and all that wisdom walk out the door and go to a competitor. But when I'm stuck in the trap of proud insecurity, all I want to do is sweep my failures under the rug, pretend they never happened, hope that no one ever notices, and just move on from them. But if I do that, I rob myself and the people around me from the valuable wisdom that comes through failure. Many of you have probably heard of a guy named Babe Ruth. You familiar with Babe Ruth? He's widely considered to be one of the greatest baseball players of all time. And Babe Ruth held many Major League Baseball records, things like RBIs and home runs, slugging percentage. Some of his records still stand today, long after he is passed on. And he was called the Sultan of SWAT because of his home run hitting capability. He could just hit the ball so hard and so far. But he also had another nickname that not as many people remember, and that was the King of Strikeouts. Babe Ruth set the Major League Baseball record with I believe it was 1,330 strikeouts in his career. And that record stood for 30 years until it was beaten by a guy named Mickey Mantle. So Mickey Mantle took the strikeout record from Babe Ruth. Now, this should tell you that failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of the process of success. See, those guys had big success because they took big swings, and they knew that those big swings came with some failures along the way. But failure is an important step in the process. And if you understand baseball, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but a batter who strikes out against a pitcher learns something about that pitcher in the process. And every time they face a pitcher, they learn a little bit that's going to give them an advantage on the next time. The pitcher's tells or tendencies or patterns or habits. So we learn a lot from failure. And we need to make sure we remember the important lessons and that we're willing to share those with other people. Otherwise, those lessons die with us. Those lessons are lost with us. A number of years ago, I was talking to a young entrepreneur. This guy had started a business right out of college, and he had managed to get some investment money from a big name investor. It was one of those guys on Shark Tank. I won't say who it was, but big name investor. And he was telling me all about his business and how great things were going. And I could just sense that behind the great sales pitch, that he was experiencing a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of insecurity even. And so I did something that I hadn't done a lot up to that point. I started to just open up with him about my own entrepreneurial journey, and in particular, some of the struggles and challenges that I had faced. And he teared up. He started to get emotional, and he said, "Kris, this is the first real conversation I've had with anyone about how hard this is." And he was faking it till he makes it. He was trying to be the perfect expert entrepreneur, and he was really trying to measure up to all the other people around him who were faking it till they make it. But the moment that I let my guard down and said, "I'm willing to tell you the real story, including my struggles and my failures," it extended a lifeline to him. It opened up an opportunity for him to get real and get honest and learn something. And it was a powerful moment that I've never forgotten. And since then, I've tried to be more vulnerable and more honest with people about not just my success stories, but about some of the struggles that I've had along the way. In fact, I'm going to share a mistake with you right now that you've already experienced from me. If you did the 2K agenda that Scott and the franchise owners offered you, you may have seen the quote that I gave just a little bit ago, but it was attributed to C.S. Lewis in that. And that was wrong. And I learned since I sent that information that it wasn't C.S. Lewis, it was Rick Warren who originally said that. Now, it may be that Rick Warren was paraphrasing C.S. Lewis because C.S. Lewis has written a lot about humility, but I learned that you can't just Google a quote on the internet, and just because someone sells a plaque on Amazon that has a quote with C.S. Lewis on it, that doesn't mean C.S. Lewis actually said that. So I had to do some fact checking, and I'm here to tell you I made a mistake. And I've had to correct that. In fact, it's misquoted in my book, and I hate that. But at least now on my slides, it's attributed properly to Rick Warren. So let's review these 3 humble confidence habits that I've shared with you, and you can start to see how they will help you move from that trap of proud insecurity where you're trying to look perfect on the outside, but you're dealing with fear and anxiety on the inside, to walking in humble confidence where you can just simply say, hey, I'm going to make some mistakes along the way. I don't have all the answers. I've got to figure some things out, but I have the confidence that I have the ability and I'm connected to the right people and I know how to reach out and I can find the answers that I need and learn my way and experiment and even in some cases fail my way to success. So these habits are say, I don't know more often, reorient the source of your confidence from having the answers to your ability to find those answers, and then to share your failures as learnings. All right, I want to pause here. And as I said, I've got a 4th habit that I want to share with you in a few minutes, but I want to open up for Q&A. Any questions that you have? What's coming up for you as I've been talking about this idea of humble confidence? John, thanks for the Abraham Lincoln quote about the internet. I appreciate that very much. Any questions?
Y'all feel free to unmute yourselves or hold the space bar to unmute and you can chime in. Brianne, we're not done yet.
Wow, no questions.
I have a thought, Kris.
Yeah, Scott, go ahead. Oh, you're muted now.
Maybe it's because I spend so much time in my last 35 years of my life selling. And I think all of us struggle with sales. But I was just thinking how if you applied this to your sales. So I'm thinking, what do people hate about sales? They hate when they have to be out of integrity.
Yes.
Like if I'm presenting something factual and accurate and I believe I can help someone, we all feel great about sales. When I have to do something out of integrity, that's when we just want to get as far away from being called a salesperson in the world. So you mentioned the integrity part, and I just thought about this part of sales. I thought about saying to a prospect, listen, I sold this product to one time to a person who didn't need it, and it was a disaster. Can you imagine what your prospect would be thinking? And then to be able to say, look, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know how to find the answer, and I'm willing to go do that. So I'm thinking about this in sort of a sales context and how applicable it is. That was the only thing I wanted to contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you acknowledge that you don't have an answer to a question, it actually helps your credibility on all your other answers. Think about that for a second. If you say something that is obviously suspect, that makes everything that you say suspect. But if when you don't know the answer, you say, you know what, I don't know, that's a great question, and maybe I haven't heard it before, or I need to go figure that out. That's something I should know, and I apologize, but I will find the answer for you. When you let them know, what that tells them is the other things you've been telling them, you weren't just making up, because you're willing to admit when you don't have that answer. So I think it's a really powerful thing to building trust when you say, I don't know, when you say, I don't have all the answers. And as you said, Scott, when you acknowledge a mistake, I sold this product to somebody who it wasn't right for them. And I thought it was a win at the time, but man, now I regret it because I look back and it wasn't a success story. And I don't ever want to do that again. I want to make sure this is a fit.
It's golden.
Yeah, I've done some work with I've done a lot of work with marketing professionals. And marketing in particular is a challenging industry because it changes so fast. And especially if you work for an agency or you're in a consulting role, your clients want you to have all the answers. They want you to be that expert. And so the temptation is to say, yeah, we know all the answers. We know what will work. We've got all of this stuff. When in reality, it's changing so fast. You can't know it all at any time. And so what I've helped marketing professionals in particular to learn to do is to lean into the idea that, hey, this changes so fast that none of us know it like the back of our hand, but my expertise is going out and figuring it out for you. And I may not know exactly how this is going to work, or, and also I may not have done this thing you're asking me to do before, but I've done lots of other things before. And that's our job, is to figure it out. And that's what we're good at, is figuring it out.
Shannon's got her hand up. Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, Shannon.
Hey, Kris, sorry, I'm driving from Fisk right now. I wanted to share, when we did this agenda, someone came up with a question or a response that I thought was really powerful. A little bit, rather than just, that's a great question. In this situation, they said, no one's ever asked me that before. That's a great question. Let me find out for you. And by acknowledging this, no one's ever asked me that before, all of a sudden now you've actually lifted them up, right? Like,
yes.
And I just thought that was such a powerful reply that I wanted to share that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it can affirm the person who asked, like, you've come up with something new and interesting, and I can actually be excited about it. Ooh, this is something new for me to go learn. It demonstrates that you're a learner. That's a great response. Thank you, Shannon.
Yep.
All right, last call for questions. Everybody wants to know what the fourth habit is. I think that's what it is. All right, well, here it is. A bonus habit. And this one is a little different. But this habit is to accept the compliments that people give you. In all my work and all my study around imposter syndrome, I discovered that one of the symptoms of imposter syndrome is the inability to accept a compliment at face value. What happens is somebody says, you did a great job, or that was great work, or I really loved your work. And we downplay the comment, or we deflect it with sarcasm, or we say that the bar is low, or it wasn't that big a deal. I've got a friend who is a writer, and I mean a good writer. Like, he's written books that have sold millions of copies. And yet when somebody compliments his writing, he says something like, "Oh, you and my mom must have been my two readers on that." Why do we do that? Why do we downplay and deflect the compliments people give us? And I want to challenge you today to consider that when someone pays you a compliment and you downplay or deflect it, you're actually insulting that person. They have offered you a gift, and you're saying, it doesn't mean that much to me. I don't want it. You're telling them that their opinion doesn't matter, or their standards are too low, because what they think is a big deal, you're saying is not a big deal. You're downplaying them, not just what they said about you. And so imagine someone's handed you a gift and they want to see you open the gift and enjoy the gift. And so you may say, "Kris, how does this play into being humble?" Because I deflect those compliments in an attempt to be humble. And I'm going to challenge you to say that you're probably attempting to appear humble. But trying to appear humble is managing your image, which is a form of pride, not humility. Let's go back to the Rick Warren quote. The definition of humility is thinking of yourself less. So if you stop worrying about what the person thinks of you and just focus on them, you'll graciously accept the compliment that they've given you. Thank you so much. Let them see you enjoy. Let them see you get the joy from the gift that they've given you. So I'm going to give you a script. You ready? When someone pays you a compliment, plant your feet, look them in the eye, smile, and say, "Thank you. I worked really hard on that, and it's so nice to know that my work is appreciated." No deflection, no downplaying. And let's break this down for a second, because there's a couple of important aspects about this. Number one, start with gratitude. thank you. Just be appreciative right out of the gate without any exception or exclusion or, no asterisk, no explanation necessary. Just be grateful. Secondly, acknowledge the work. I worked hard on that, and it's great to know that my work is appreciated. When you acknowledge the work, you do two things. Number one, you acknowledge for yourself that I earned this compliment. I did work hard on that. I did put some effort in. And maybe you don't feel like you worked super hard, but if you didn't work really hard at it, you probably have developed some skill and talent that made it easy at some point. And so you've earned it along the way. The other thing you do when you say, I worked hard at that, is you put whatever you did in reach for the other person. This is what I've noticed is if someone compliments me, let's just say, for example, that you tell me after I've spoken, Kris, you're a great speaker. You did a good job presenting to us today. If I just say, yes, I really am amazing, or, I've always been a good speaker, or something like that, that puts a distance between me and you. I'm different than you are. I'm a great speaker because I'm a great speaker. But if I say I've worked really hard to become a great communicator, I've had training and coaching, and I've spent hours, I've got hundreds, maybe thousands of hours in a speech like this, then what that says is, I'm not special. You could do this too if you're willing to put in the work. And so it puts it within reach. And it is an act of humility to say, I worked hard on that. It did take some effort. And I'm grateful to know that effort resulted in something valuable. So I want to challenge you, the next time someone pays you a compliment, don't think of yourself. Don't think about what they're going to think of you. Just honor them. Honor the giver of the gift and let them see you enjoy the gift that they've handed you. All right. I'm going to ask you for a gift right now, and that is some feedback. I thrive on feedback. So I would love it if you would be willing to share your thoughts on the speech in a brief survey. And I'm going to put the URL in the chat as well. If you don't want to use the QR code or look it up, you can click on that. A real quick survey. And if you will fill out this quick survey, I'm going to send you as a gift back a tool called the Learning Map. This is something that I developed as I was writing my book to help you take your mistakes and failures and some of the parts of your past, perhaps that you are tempted to hide and pretend didn't happen, and actually recognize the value and the wisdom that has come from that and how it has contributed to your success. It's a tool that can help you tell your story more accurately, more thoroughly. And this tool is a small component, and really this lesson that I've given you is a small component of an online course that I've developed called Overcoming the Imposter. But if you'll fill out that survey, you'll get that tool sent directly to you, totally free of charge. And I hope that you will get some value out of that, taking time with that tool. Last thing I'll mention is, as Scott said, I did write a book on imposter syndrome, and you can get a free sample chapter of that book at overcomingtheimposter.com if that's something you're interested in. And that is all I have for today. Scott, we're a little bit early, but if there's more questions, I'm happy to take those.
Yeah. Any questions at all, or thoughts or comments? Anything from anyone? I have one, but let's see. Anybody else? I think your last tip can really impact people a lot deeper than you think. As parents, all of us that are on here, a lot of us that have kids. And when I think about why I can't just say, hey, Don, thank you so much for that compliment. That means a lot to me. I can't say that because of the messages I got from my parents typically, right? And they were doing the best they could, but the world's changed, right? And so I'm thinking of my kids now and how I need, instead of being so worried about being humble and being seen as being humble, let them bask in the glory of their victories, right? And I don't think I do that well enough. So that's a real gift to me to help me be a better parent. I hope some of the rest of you think about that.
Yeah. Thank
But I
you,
think that's where
Scott.
it comes from. I think that's where it comes from, right? It's something when we're a little kid, like be humble, you know?
Well, I do think, I think that the tendency is often well-meaning.
Yeah.
Right. That tendency to deflect a compliment of like, it is, and I don't want to be prideful. I don't want to get into arrogance. But as I said, often what you end up doing is insulting the other person inadvertently. And I think we should stop doing that. I think it would help all of us to be more humbly confident if we were just willing to accept those compliments and then more quick to pay them as well, to offer something of value to another person. But we got to quit being uncomfortable with that exchange of, hey, you did a really great job and you deserve some recognition for your work.
Yeah, great point. Anything else anyone has? Well, Kris, thank you. Before we go, I would like to ask for a little favor of you all, if you don't mind. We will not be back on the speaker series until the end of January. In November, obviously with Thanksgiving, we don't do speaker series. And then in December, we have a lot of holiday activity. So if you would take just 1 minute and write in the chat, just write down the biggest challenge in your business, each one of you, the biggest challenge in your business. And what I want to do, if you don't mind, is we'll look at those and we'll prioritize those, and we'll see if we can't build agendas around those next year with speakers who can reinforce the solution. So what do you need more of, or what's the biggest challenge in your business? Just take a minute and fill up our chat, if you will, and you'll be very helpful in helping us shape the next year, the 2025 agendas for Network in Action. And thank you for doing that.
Kris, sorry, I couldn't figure out how to put my hand up on the chat. I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, yeah.
I just did have a question on that.
Sure.
I find sometimes like potential clients that hesitate to work with us because they perceive us as a smaller operation, right?
Yeah.
And they're unsure if we'd be able to handle larger orders. How do you strike that balance of being authentic and humble while also confidently showing that you're capable without needing to fake it till you make it?
Yeah.
Have you faced anything similar, and like, how did you overcome that?
Absolutely. So let me tell you, my first company that I started was called the Kelso Group, in part because I'm not very imaginative. But it was the Kelso Group, and the total employee count was 1. It was just me. For the first couple of years, it was just me. And yes, I did get made fun of for calling it the Kelso Group when it was only 1 person. So I've totally been there, where you're trying to project experience and size, you feel like size matters. And it can be tricky because for some customers that really does matter, and it will scare them to know that you're very small. And I don't know how young a company you are, but being small to some is a negative thing. So, but what I would say is, number one, I still think it's important to have integrity and to be honest. That doesn't mean that, I didn't lead with, I'm a company of 1. I didn't say that necessarily, but neither did I try to intentionally create some myth that I've got a whole army of people behind me. What I would do is lean into quality and experience. And what I was able to say, especially after I hired a few people, and by the way, the first 6 or 7 years of my company, everyone I hired was older than me, more experienced than me, and more educated than me. And that was because I was trying to upgrade, and I was trying to build something that was good. And so I was then able to say things like, on our team, we have, nearly 100 years of experience combined in this field, or, I've got, I may not, and this is something that helped me when as we started to grow, we started branching into areas where I wasn't the expert. I had someone who was the expert, and I would have to be able to say, look, I'm not the cybersecurity guy, but I've got a great cybersecurity guy, and we can help you with that effort, with that kind of a work. So I would say, you don't have to lead with we're small, but if it comes up or if it seems to be a concern, own it, but counter it with, it's not about size, it's about quality. It's not about, the number of people, it's about the caliber of people, and it's about the experience that we have and the fact that we can learn and grow quickly together. And even, you're aware that size, that small size, means you can be more nimble and more adaptive. And so there are those pros to it as well.
Yeah, I would add, Noble, one of the things you could say is like, listen, you're going to have my direct cell phone number. You're going to have access to the entire team at any point in time. There's a million benefits to dealing with somebody that's going to be so personally involved with your project. And all we need is a chance, and we're going to prove it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. One last thing I'll add is, I did have a guy specifically say, when I was pitching a consulting gig and I was going to do the consulting work, and he said, well, if I go with one of these big consulting firms, then at least if the consultant messes up, I've got a throat to choke. I can go call the boss or the manager or the owner, or, I can get some. And I was like, but I am the owner. Like you will have the guy to who's invested in making sure this works. And he didn't seem to get that. He didn't appreciate that. And what I ultimately determined was those kind of people weren't a good fit for me anyway. If that's all he cares about is having a throat to choke or having some hierarchy that he feels like good about, I can go up, 3 levels above you and get a hold of some bigwig, then that really wasn't who I was trying to win as a customer, and our values weren't aligned. And ultimately I probably was better off because I didn't get that client.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd rather not have those either. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kris.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anything? Oh, I hit the wrong button. Anything else? Anybody have anything to add? Thank you for putting your tips and suggestions into the chat there for us next year. I appreciate that. And if I don't see you guys, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. I guess we got to start with Halloween. Great Thanksgiving, great holiday season. And hopefully we'll see you here next year on our speaker series or sales mastery. And we will see you around the networking space. Thank you, Kris, for your time. Thank all of you for taking time out to sharpen your saw. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you. Have a great week.